All right. So we've been talking a lot about stress and different ways to manage that through breath and mindfulness. Um, and today, what I wanted to talk a little bit about, it might seem sort of off to left field, but hopefully I'll bring it back to the same sort of managing stress and tools for stress topic, is your back. And I think it's a really important topic, especially if you are someone who is sitting at work all the time. So back pain is, I think, as a yoga teacher, I'm sure Jen can attest to the same as me. Backs are not what, like, pretty much the number one thing people ask us for in terms of support for their body. And part of the reason why is that we're pretty sedentary creatures generally. And so we tend to put our back through this kind of rigmarole that it isn't really designed for. And one of the things you hear a lot of times is humans are not designed to walk upright, but that's actually not correct. Our spines are perfectly designed to support us that way, but we tend to do things like sit for prolonged periods of time. And particularly after the pandemic, during all this, a lot of us are home and sitting for prolonged periods of time. And we tend to be putting our backs in these positions that are not super supportive. So that's one piece. And the other piece I want to talk about is the fact that we have a really large muscle in our back that is central to the fight or flight system that we've talked about so many times. We've talked about the rest and digest, and that's how you come back from the saber-toothed tiger or the stress that's chasing you. And then there's the fight or flight, which is your sort of primal animal stress response, and how ours is constantly turned on. I know I'm kind of like a broken record, and we've been talking about this so much, but you have a muscle in your body that is part of that response beyond your breath. And I actually have like a little anatomical model here of the spine and the pelvis. Just to show you, this muscle I'm talking about is called the psoas, and it attaches along your lumbar, your low back, along each of the vertebrae in your low back. So getting back to the back, comes through the bowl of your pelvis and then attaches to the head of your femur, that big thigh bone. And so you may be saying to yourself, like, what does this have to do with anything that we've talked about all along? But when you have that fight or flight response, what happens with your psoas is it contracts so that you can hunch down and run away from the saber-toothed tiger. So even if your stress is an email, a bill, or whatever, that same stress response happens. And so it's really important for us to be constantly thinking about how we can relax that muscle or release that muscle, because we're always in the contraction run away. And when you sit, you're doing the same thing over and over again. So we're going to do a little seated practice in a moment to just kind of move our back and talk about some of the things we can do to release that muscle, and also how we can support our back if we're doing if we have like a seated life. So stress lands in your back, like we said. The first thing I want to mention is that you have two sides of your body, right? You have the front and the back. While one of those sides is like contracted and tight and squeezy, the other one's relaxed. So if you're sitting in a chair all the time and you're making your back really contracted, then your abdominal muscles are relaxed. So one of the things we're going to do in a moment is to talk about how we can engage our abdominal muscles even while we're sitting, and how that relaxes your back and gives you calm in your back. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to talk about ways to sit so that you don't have back pain and it doesn't exacerbate your stress. And then third, we're going to move a little bit in our seated practice. Okay. So first and foremost, one of the most important things I want you to focus on is how you are sitting. And how you sit actually affects how you feel up in your neck and shoulders. That's where we carry a lot of our tension. And a lot of that is referred discomfort from our low back. So when we sit on chairs, a lot of times we sit and we round our back. So I'm going to go sit on my chair. Now, hopefully you can see me. When we sit on our chairs, we tend to sit back and kind of round our backs like this. And then that causes a lot of stress in our low back and our upper back. And this is actually, you may not be able to see, I'm kind of tilting my pelvis and I'm rounding. So the first thing I want us to do is to sit forward on our chair. So when we've done chair yoga in the past, I've mentioned this, but now you're getting like a better idea of why. So you're gonna sit forward. I'm almost at the edge of my chair here. And then my pelvis, so this like, you know, the part where like your torso meets your legs, your pelvis, I'm gonna have it almost tipped forward. And one of the ways I describe this in my in-person yoga classes is you have three options here with your pelvis. One is to tilt it back, one is to keep it neutral, and one is to tip it kind of forward. And if you think about your pelvis like a bowl of soup, you have an option to pour the soup behind you where you're rounding. You have the soup kind of neutral, or you're tipping it slightly forward, and if the soup was going to spill, it would spill in your lap. So for the purposes of kind of keeping your back stable and supported and using your abdominal muscles, so using the front rather than the back, I want you to have your bowl of soup slightly tipped forward, okay? And this is actually the most stable way for your spine to be. So coming back to the humans aren't designed to walk upright. This is how your spine's meant to be. And we tend to do this a lot, which is not very stable. So bowl of soup tipped forward, sitting at the edge of your seat. So if nothing else comes out of this practice today, when you're sitting at your computer or your desk and working, you want to be sitting a little farther forward rather than sitting back, okay? So already there, you're going to be helping your back. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on using our abdominal muscles. And I just want to grab, I forgot to bring this with me. I have a block. But what you will do is I have a threefold action that I do with my abdominal muscles. So what I do is I imagine that my belly button is going towards my back and then up underneath my ribs. It's like a fishhook action where you feel like you're drawing it towards your back and up underneath your ribs. And if I just sit relaxed and I do nothing, kind of how I am, and then if I do that, where I draw my belly button in and up, it makes me sit more upright because I'm using deep spinal stabilizing muscles, okay? So your belly button doesn't actually work, but move that way, but you wanna feel like it is, in and up. And then you will bring your ribs, the bottom ribs, in and down. So they're not sticking forward, they're just kind of tucked in slightly. And then the last one is to imagine if you have a seam along the sides of your shirt, it's long and not crinkly at all. So you're keeping that seam really long and straight. So that is in and up with your belly button, ribs in and down, long seams. And then it feels kind of like you're doing a little bit of abdominal work. You're kind of squeezing those abdominal muscles and your back is nice and relaxed, okay? I wanted to just point out too, if all of that is too much, you can always grab a block. You can buy these anywhere, you know, Target, TJ Maxx, any store, Dick's, Sporting Goods, and you can take a block and put it between your knees while you're working, or a book, you know, that you know isn't going to open, and you squeeze that block and it does a lot of the similar things. So if you find that you can't remember all those steps I just said, grab a block, squeeze it between your knees, and then you're using your abdominal muscles and not your back. Okay, so let's do just a couple movements here. We're gonna start at the front of our seat, just like I said, so if you slid back, I want you to sit really tall and just rest your hands on your lap and allow yourself to close your eyes and take a breath or two. Just kind of checking in, hearing the sounds of my voice, the sounds of your space, feeling each foot on the floor in your shoes or bare feet. Notice if your shoulders are up, and if they are, bring them down. Take one more breath like that. And now totally relax your back and kind of slump like you're rounding like a hedgehog, and take a breath and feel that. Notice how that feels. Okay, and we're going to come back to sitting upright and do those three things. So still eyes closed or gaze down. Imagine that you're drawing your belly button towards your back and up under your ribs. So in and up like a fish hook. Bring your ribs in and down and sit really tall, nice long side seams. And again, just check in, take a breath and notice. All right. Open your eyes, bring your hands to your thighs. We'll inhale and bring our chest forward. Exhale and round. Inhale, chest forward. These are seated cats and dogs. Exhale, round. Two more like this. Inhale, chest forward. Exhale, round. Inhale, chest forward. Exhale, round. I lied, one more. Inhale, chest forward. Exhale, round. And then come back up. Now we're gonna actually stand up and stand behind our chair. So I'm gonna scoot this chair forward. We'll do a couple standing poses. If standing doesn't work for you, you can scoot your chair back and hold on to your desk, okay? So we're gonna stand and walk our feet back. Again, still doing that in and up action. And allow your spine to be very long until you feel this in the back of your legs. And just kind of pedal your feet. Don't dip your head really low. Don't dip your ribs, but just pedal your feet. This is almost like a downward facing dog for a chair. And why would we want to stretch the back of our legs? Because everything is connected. So you get really tight in the back of your legs from sitting, and that will help open up the back as well. One more breath here. And slowly walk yourself back up. We'll take the right foot forward and the left leg will come back, heel lifted. And this is actually a stretch that releases and opens that muscle we just talked about, the psoas. So I'm holding on. You can hold on with one hand and do it sideways or both hands. Your heel is lifted and you're really keeping that upright spine. So I'm doing those same three things, in and up, ribs in and down, long spine, and just stretching the back of this leg and opening up the front of this leg. One more breath on this side and then we'll switch to the other side. Gently come up. You might even pause and notice they don't feel like they're the same length because they aren't. We'll switch to the second side, heel towards the back. Behind you, like you're trying to get it to the ground, you're still upright and you're getting a nice opening in the front of that leg, a nice stretch in the back of the leg. Two more full breaths. Gently bring that leg up, shake it out. All right, so in the interest of time, I'm gonna end there, but I wanted to just give you one last tip, and that is, and I'll demonstrate for you in a moment here. There's a really great practice for relaxing your back, for releasing that muscle in your back that tends to be the one that talks to us so much, that's so involved in our stress response. And this practice is called constructive rest. It's really simple. You just lie on your back, knees bent, feet flat on the floor, and you stay there for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, depending on your time. And gravity pulls that muscle towards the ground. Super therapeutic, incredibly relaxing, and it's really simple. It looks like this. That's it. So constructive rest, stretching your spine, some cats and dogs, and remembering to not round your back, but to sit upright and use those abdominal muscle engagers to relax your back. And hopefully that will help with any stress that lands there And let me know if you have any questions. You can always reach out to me or to Jen on the platform, and we'll see you next week.